today? Say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. And let's start with just some takeaways. So put it in the chat. What's been your biggest takeaway from this masterclass so far? As you are sharing your takeaways in the chat, I'm just going to kind of recap some of the biggest lessons that we've talked about so far. So in session one, we talked all about the secret to getting clients from podcast guesting. Now, most people think about podcast guesting just through the lens of visibility. I'm going to go get in front of an audience of, hundreds or thousands of people, and those people are going to hear me and they're going to come become my client. And that's definitely one way that you can get clients from podcast guesting. However, one of the most common pieces of feedback we get from our clients who see a really good return on investment is that the host becomes their client. So the host is the first way that you can get clients from podcast guesting, their audience and also your own audience. So session one is full of gold because to see a return on investment through getting clients, you want to know what those three different ways are and how to go about doing that. All right. Hello. Yes. Keep saying hello in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. We've got New York, California, Orlando, Cincinnati, Texas, North Carolina in the house. So thanks for being here live. Session two, we talked all about the art of being an unforgettable podcast guest. To see a return on investment from podcast guesting, to actually have the tactics and the strategies that we talk about in session one work, you have to convey confidence on your podcast appearances. You have to share compelling stories that create an emotional connection between you and the audience. You have to really make the host look good because this is their show. They have the power to really have a lot of influence with their audience about working with you, promoting your episode, publishing your episode maybe sooner than they originally thought they might, because that can happen when you're a really great guest. They're like, this was so great. I was originally going to publish it next month because I've got a couple other recordings, but I got to get this out sooner. I've had that happen where hosts are like, forget the schedule. I'm bumping you up to front of the line because I need my audience to hear this. So when you become an unforgettable podcast guest, you get your episodes out there even faster. You wow the host, and they could even invite you back for follow-up appearances to the point where maybe you have a whole series of episodes on their show and you're getting multiple interviews heard by their audience with you. So that's what happens when you're an unforgettable podcast guest. And it does take consistency to get to that point of excellence as a podcast guest. It is an art and it's a dance between you and that podcast host. If you are a speaker and you are used to being the only one on stage and having 30 minutes or an hour to give a keynote talk, then it is going to take a little bit of practice as a podcast guest to learn the back and forth nature of being with a host, because it's important to allow the host to also interject into the conversation and to share their perspective. So that's a little bit about being an unforgettable podcast guest. And then session three, we talked all about amplifying your authority online through repurposing your podcast interviews. Because if you just do a podcast interview and see what you get from that one time that you're with the host, having people hear you, you're only going to get a little bit of results. If you learn to leverage these podcast appearances by repurposing them, turning them into clips that you then post on your social media, using them in your marketing funnel, your sales funnel, sending them to your list, turning the podcast interviews and the brilliance that you shared by responding to questions and then taking that brilliance and turning it into written content, you are going to get so much more mileage out of your podcast appearances than you would have if you just did the interview and then waited to see what happened. So this masterclass so far has been really the blueprint of how to grow your brand and get clients, increase your visibility through podcast guesting. So that is just a little bit of a snapshot of what we've learned over the past couple of days. I'm just going to check out the chat. Karen asked, how many videos or content do you need to have in the can before you can begin? So I don't know if, Karen, you're asking about hosting your own show, but just get out on podcasts. You don't need to, there's no benchmark to which you need to have this many in order to start. It's like that old saying, the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. Just start getting on podcasts. I think this happens a lot where people are like, but I can't start until this. I can't start until I have this. Just start. Just start. Sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to start because they're like, well, my messaging's not perfect. I don't have the right stories, or I'm not that great of a speaker yet. I need to work on my crutch words. If you are not embarrassed by your first podcast interview, you've probably waited too long to start. Like, I don't want to go back and listen to my first podcast appearance because I probably didn't sound that good. But you know what? I'm a great guest now because I just started, but when I was still really nervous, and then you get better and better. So just start. If you're asking, what do I need before I can start? The answer is you just gotta start. Okay, Karen asks, how many videos do you need saved before you jump into marketing as a guest? You don't need any videos saved, Karen. You just got to get going. Okay, you have an old school, like a producer background. Yeah. So sometimes we need to unlearn kind of like the old school, like you need this and this. Like this is just about getting out there, getting in conversation to grow your business. All right. I'm just going to check and see if we've got our speakers here so we can dive in. Okay, awesome. Our first speaker is here. So I'm just going to run through real quickly. I want to make sure that you are all implementing what you've learned. So first of all, welcome, officially welcome to the final session of the Podcast Guesting Masterclass. I'm your host, Jessica Rhodes, the founder of Interview Connections. We're the first and leading podcast booking agency since 2013. We have booked over 50,000 podcast interviews. We've worked with more than 1,000 clients who have closed millions of dollars in sales from podcast guesting, have become best-selling authors, have landed speaking engagements, all through the power of podcast guesting. You're going to have replay access to this masterclass until December 19th. So by this point, you've got over a week left to watch all the sessions. And learning is great. I'm giving you a lot of tips that you can go implement. But to implement what I'm teaching you, you actually have to be a guest on podcasts. You have to get booked consistently on the right shows. And when you become a member of Interview Connections, that will happen for you, guaranteed. So to apply to become a member, go to interviewconnections.com/apply. And I'm going to tell you what is included in our membership. So you're going to get guaranteed bookings on podcasts every single month. We have 3 different membership tiers. 1 booking a month if you're just getting started, or if you're super duper busy, but you still want to get out there. 3 bookings a month. That's our gold level, most popular, 3 bookings a month. And then our platinum is 5 bookings per month. Every member gets a professionally written and designed podcast one sheet and a media kit. And we will repurpose all of your interviews that get published while you're an active member of Interview Connection. So we'll actually turn your podcast appearances into short video clips that you can publish on your social media. You'll get monthly calls with your dedicated booking agent who is going to help coach you and guide you on the strategy for podcast guesting, talk through how the shows are going so we continue to hone your approach. You'll get access to our school community, which has pre-recorded trainings and resources. And then also I host monthly business mastermind calls to bring Interview Connections members together for business growth support. So the investment, we have 3 different levels. It starts at just $1,000 a month for silver, 3 bookings a month for gold, which is $1,875 a month. And then the platinum is $3,250 a month. And this is a monthly membership. There are no long-term contracts. If you invest annually, you get a month free. So to apply, go to interviewconnections.com/call, book a call, and we'll help you get started. So we are going to dive right in. One of my favorite client success stories is who's coming up now, Julia Blackwell, who is a fascia expert. I will have her introduce herself so she can explain what she does. But Julia, come on up to the stage.
Hey, Jessica, can you hear me? Am I good?
And hear you. It's so good to see you. How are you?
Ooh, I'm good. Thanks for having me on and able to join for this.
Yeah, so please tell everyone what you do. You might have to define fascia so they know what we're talking about here, and share what was your business like before you started getting on podcasts, and how has it impacted your business now?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Julia Blackwell. I am a fascia expert, a fascia release practitioner, and the creator of my own methodology called the Fascia Remedy. So I help really anyone, ranging from professional athletes to everyday movers, just help them demystify their body and help them get out of pain, unlock mobility, remove stress from their body, and just overall just feel great through strategic fascia release. And I always tell people fascia is a bit like the plastic wrap that wraps around every single thing in your body. So every little fiber of muscle, every muscle group, every bone, nerve, blood vessel, organ, bone. Did I already say that? I don't know. Everything wrapped like a 3-dimensional plastic wrap suit that you wear on the inside. that if it were to magically disappear out of your body, you would go tumbling to the ground in a pile of bones and goo. So it's actually very, very critical in understanding why pain happens, why mobility or flexibility gets lost, and just understanding so much of what I call mystery pain that's happening in the world. So, for the longest time, I just had a practice. I'm in Golden, Colorado. I still have my practice. It's about to be 11 years old next week.
That's
Hooray.
awesome. Congrats.
But as with most of us that went through the pandemic, when I couldn't see people in person anymore, I started wanting to figure out how could I help more people? How could I still help people get out of pain or just work on whatever was going on with them from afar? So I started creating online programs and doing virtual sessions, but it was the slowest growing thing you could possibly imagine. All I was doing was posting on Instagram. I'm sure we're all familiar with that run around. I had an email list, but it was pretty small. And it just felt like this thing was so valuable. And I knew I didn't just need to work on people for them to see results. They could get them on their own if they knew what to do with things like foam rollers or just knowing where to release in their body for a pain in a different area to go away. So it was a struggle. And honestly, the more I tried, it almost seemed like the less results I was getting. And I was getting really frustrated. So oh my gosh, Jessica, I can't even remember how we got. We had a mutual friend. I was like, how did we even get connected? But someone had recommended you, and I was a little hesitant on pulling the trigger. I had not done more than maybe two podcasts, and they were friends podcasts that felt very informal. And I was a little unsure on how it was going to go, but I really liked this idea of having a longer form conversation with someone. My skill set is organically connecting with someone one on one. And I just feel like I'm shouting into the void on Instagram. It's a lot harder for me. I have a tough time connecting, looking at my phone and pretending I'm talking to a bunch of people. So I just was blown away. It took a few months to get rolling, but I immediately made connections with so many hosts. They felt like immediate friends. Um, and I really started seeing the shift with the online products I had. So I think I had been marketing for my online course. It's called Roller Remedy, which is just a video library of how to do fascia release on yourself at home. I think I had like 20 sales, 20 or 25 sales for 2 years that I'd been marketing for it. And by the end of my time with Interview Connections, I want to say I was at like 125 as far as programs sold. But it's been so much more than just making my money back and getting this information out. I've made so many good friends with the hosts. I've been asked back multiple times. I'm actually on a podcast today with a lady. I did a interview with her years ago. I think it's been about a year and a half ago, and I still got asked back. That's got to be number 4 or 5 at this point. I've also been able to make connections through the host. So the very first host that I got on her show, we connected immediately and she introduced me to another lady. And I just got back about a month ago from a retreat in Bali that happened because of this lady that I met through a podcast host. It was the most incredible time. But I've been asked to do speaking events. I have been asked to do live classes. So it's just really been an amazing way to market and network and connect with people in a way that feels more authentic to how I'd like to be doing it.
Yes.
And honestly, easy. I talked to that person for an hour and I tried not to think about how many thousands of people might listen to it later. But I just had such a great time with the host. It's felt so easy. So it's my favorite type of marketing is just going on the right shows.
We'll talk about being an unforgettable podcast guest to have the types of success stories you're sharing even years later just shows and demonstrates the longevity of podcast guesting. Paid ads or even organic social media posts they're gone. They're gone in a day. They're gone as soon as the ads go off. People are swiping. There's such a short shelf life to so many other forms of marketing, but podcast guesting, because you have that long form conversation, you really stick in people's minds for years and years to come. You have those follow-up appearances. One thing we talked about in session one about getting clients from podcast guesting, which you've gotten, sounds like over 100, is the call to action, having people know where to go to actually get your program. So can you just pull back the curtain and tell everyone here, where did you tell listeners to go at the end of that episode? How did you guide them into an investment?
Yeah, so the way I teach fascia release and foam rolling in general is different from the standard. So there's no actual rolling. It's all about compressing one area of the body and then incorporating some type of active movement. And so that can be a bit hard to convey as I'm only speaking and we only have audio as the medium here. So I had a Unlock Your Hips video series that was 3 days. It was 3 videos, about 20 minutes a piece, where I went through a bunch of things you could do in the lower body with just a foam roller, and then you could feel the difference for yourself. So it was free. It also launched them into an email sequence that was to promote the roller remedy product that I had. And so it was pretty easy. I got hundreds more on my email list. Um, and like you said, even years later, I still find that people are going through that podcast specific link because I like to track everything. There's still people going through that podcast specific sequence, which is really cool to see. Or I'll still get emails where someone's like, "Oh yeah, I heard you on this podcast," and I was like, "Man, that was 2 years ago." It's really nice to have something that is truly evergreen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the video series that you gave and that you give as your call to action really works. I went through the video series, and first of all, your methodology really, really does work. Even going through the video series, I remember messaging you. I'm like, dang, that hurts, but now I'm not in as much pain. Like, it really is so effective. And I think that's such a great call to action because it allowed people to experience your methodology without paying for it yet, which then makes them want to join the program even more because they're getting that taste of the work. So I think that's such a great call to action. What would be your advice to the entrepreneurs in this audience who want to get on podcasts, but maybe they're on the fence, they haven't yet applied to work with us? What would be your advice to them?
Listen, I certainly was in a place where it felt scary at the beginning because I didn't know what the results were going to be. It was a little slow to start, right? But it was, for me personally, the best marketing strategy that I've been able to implement. And I think the difference with you guys, which is why I tell everybody that I know about you specifically, is it really matters what podcast you're on. So I have a client who's been seeing for a decade, and she's just a friend at this point. She wrote a book, and she has someone who is booking her on podcasts right now. And she has been on like 50 podcasts. And I was like, "How many books are you selling? Like, can you tell the return on investment?" And she's like, "I don't know, not really. Like there's been a couple here and there. I've had, 17 people sign up on a list, which for 50 podcasts, I think is low." And she's had a lot of hosts no-show her, a lot of ones reschedule at the last minute. It just felt after working with you guys, it's so organized and clear. And every time I showed up for a podcast, I was like, wow, this person is such a great fit for me. And where the conversation flowed so easy, it's just getting in front of the right host and their audience is so important. It's really not about quantity, like how many can you get on? Because it's just another form of shouting into the void. So what I really would say is that's what makes you guys so special is taking the time to make sure that where what you're bothering to put your time into and show up for, because their time is so valuable, that it's actually worth your time. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Julia, where can our audience find you online if they want to listen to your podcast appearances or enroll in your program and check out your work?
Yeah, well, my Instagram handle is at the Fascia Remedy. Fascia is Fascia. And that's a place where you could dive into some of the techniques that I share, some more information. about fascia, about me, all the things. But if you go to thefasciaremedy.com, you can still get that 3-day Unlock Your Hips video series and just check out more about what I do and how fascia can seriously change your life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julia. We will make sure those links are in the chat. And I highly recommend everyone go get that video series because it really will change your life. And for all of us sitting here at our computer, sitting in a chair, you need some fascia remedies. So thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Jessica. Good to see you.
So I really appreciate what Julia is saying about the value of working with a booking agency, working with interview connections, because a lot of people think that, oh, I can just have my VA book me on podcasts, or I could do it. Like, how hard could it be? But there is a full strategy to this, getting on the right podcasts and also working with, like, when you're a member of Interview Connections, you will have a personal booking agent on our team, a full-time in-house employee at Interview Connections who is an expert in podcast guesting, who has been booking podcast interviews for 4 or 5 years full time. We've been in business for 12. Our team members have been here for 4 to 5 years. And they have relationships with podcast hosts who are very high quality. So this isn't the type of strategy that you just want to price shop and find the cheapest person that can do it, because you got to get what you pay for. And so when you work with Interview Connections, you're going to get on the right podcast for you, because you're going to have a call with your booking agent every single month where we're going over your shows, where we're evaluating the results from podcast guesting, where we're coaching you and making sure that your call to action is actually leading to more people opting into your email list and becoming a client of yours. And so I want to answer some of the questions in the chat. We have Kathy asking, do you offer practice podcasts for nervous newbies? So I definitely hear you, Kathy. When you work with Interview Connections, you're first going to have, like, if you have you apply to Interview Connections, you have a call with me and you sign up, that first call is going to be an onboarding call with me where we're going to really talk through your story, talk through your topics and your questions. And that in and of itself will kind of feel like a practice podcast, because I'm going to be asking you all these questions about what you want to be interviewed about. And so, yes, you will have that opportunity to kind of talk through your stories and talk through your interview topics. Some of our clients really specially ask for, hey, like, don't go for the stars right away, like pitch me on some smaller shows. So we can totally do that. But honestly, the best way to get practice is just to get out there, start getting booked. And it's a little trial by fire. Like, you might be nervous in that first round, but you just need to break through the fear and realize it's actually not that scary, because this is a strategy that is perfect for introverts. It's perfect for people who are nervous because it's a Zoom call. You're having a call with one other person. Yes, they're going to publish it for lots of people to listen to, but in the moment, it's just you having a conversation. So it's actually a very safe way for you to get that experience and that visibility. Do we get a list of the best equipment setup that we need? So I will tell you, as a bonus, if you apply and become a member this month, I will send you the setup that you need as a bonus gift. But it's very simple. A USB podcast microphone is really all you need. There's my favorite microphone that I recommended for over a decade has been discontinued, so I'm really grieving that loss. But there's lots of other really good ones on Amazon. Just a simple USB microphone is all you need as a podcast guest, and a ring light so that you have good lighting. Like I said in session 2, when we talked about being an unforgettable podcast guest, you want to have really nice posture, you want to have a clean background, you want to have good lighting and sound. But beyond that, it's not that complex. You don't need a studio. You don't need to go anywhere. You're just having a connection with one other person, the host, and then they're going to publish that for people to listen to. Most podcast listeners, even if it's a video show, most will listen audio only. They will just put it on their Spotify, their Apple. They're going to listen while they're driving or while they're doing dishes or the laundry or while they're working. They're not going to be sitting and watching your video interview. So it's good to have that nice setup. But remember, most people are going to be just listening to you have a connected conversation. So don't worry too much about that. Feel free to ask any other questions in the chat. Just going to check our attendance here for other speakers. And so what else is included is that we are going to have business mastermind calls every month for Interview Connections. This is something that happens where as you're getting on podcasts and as you're getting visibility to new audiences, you are going to be driving traffic to your website where the listeners can opt in and join your email list and become a client. And for example, one of our recent business mastermind calls, one of our clients shared that he had just 4 to 5 interviews go live. It was early on in the process. And he was having hundreds of new visitors come to his website. And he was just using podcasts to promote it. So it was lots of people coming to his website, but he says he wasn't able to convert anyone. And so I said, well, podcast guesting is working because you're actually getting people to your website. But if they're not converting, there's an issue once we get to your website. And so on our business mastermind call, where all Interview Connections members are invited to attend, he was able to share his screen, show his website, and myself and several other Interview Connections clients were able to give him feedback and make some really valuable connections and referrals to people that could help make his website even higher converting. There's little simple tweaks like that. On those business mastermind calls, you can also get feedback on your messaging. So we'll help you with your topics and questions, but let's say you want to workshop different topics and questions, or, maybe get feedback on your messaging in your sales and marketing process. So anything that kind of is outside the scope of podcast guesting, we have this monthly mastermind call where you can connect with other entrepreneurs who are all successful. Most of our clients are 6, 7. We have some 8-figure entrepreneurs working with us as well. So you're connecting into this incredibly valuable community of entrepreneurs who can help you take your business to the next level while you are getting interviewed on podcasts. Oh, great. Richard gave a great recommendation for a microphone. Karen asked, audio, do I need a specific mic? So Richard just gave an example, but again, just any podcast microphone will be great. And yes, you're going to be able to connect with others when you are working with Interview Connections. We are also going to write your podcast one sheet. So we talked a bit about the podcast one sheet in session 2 when we talked about being an unforgettable podcast guest, but I want to spend a little bit more time on that here, because before you get interviewed on a podcast, we are going to pitch you to the podcast host. Actually, we've got Christina here, our next speaker. So I'm going to pause there and bring Christina up to speak. So Christina, why don't you come on stage? Hi, Christina.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah,
Okay, so you all are in for a treat because Christina is not only one of my favorite clients, she's one of my favorite people. I've been a client of hers. My daughter has been a client of hers. She's an empowerment coach and a clinical hypnotherapist and has been working with us for about 3 years. So Christina, I would love for you to share with our audience kind of where you were before podcast guesting and then how your business has transformed since you started.
sure, absolutely. So I was in the very early stages of my business, and I was probably about 6 months, less than a year into, I had left a corporate career of 30 years and started becoming a clinical hypnotherapist, didn't have a lot of credibility, and decided that podcasting would be a great way to get myself known, and had never been on a podcast and thought, what am I going to talk about? And came on a masterclass just like this and decided this would be a great way to do it. But I was concerned because I had never done anything like this. And so one of the questions am I ready? Am I good enough? Am I going to have anything to talk about? And Jess and the team assured me, you're good, let's do this. And so I joined, and it's actually almost 4 years now that I've been on board. And so it instantly gave me incredible credibility in the industry, in a new industry, I might add. So before I even was on a podcast, I did what the team recommended, and that was share that I'm going to be on podcasts. And so that's one of my greatest success stories was I started saying, hey, I'm going to be on this show. It's about to come out. And one of my first success stories was that someone recognized it, shared with a friend, and I got hired to be a speaker because of that, because of the credibility from that. And I became a speaker. And from that speaking event up in Napa, California, I got many, many clients just from that. And the show I hadn't even been on the podcast, hadn't even aired, but from credibility of being on a show. So that was right out of the gate. So
Yeah, I love that story so much. I talk about that. I mentioned that in session 3 because one of our tips is to talk about the fact that you're getting on podcasts. And there's an expression, little hinges swing big doors. I'm trying to remember, there's another book, but that's probably the most well-known metaphor. And that really is true for podcast guesting because it's not like a silver bullet strategy. It's not like you just do a podcast interview and then the results come from that. There's all these little tweaks that you can make, or these little doors that you can swing, these little
Yeah.
hinges that you can swing, and then they create these massive results. Like, I think people might overlook, like, okay, yeah, posted, I'm getting booked, but big whoop. But no, like it gets speaking opportunities. It tells your audience that you're available to speak, which can lead to other opportunities. A lot of people say, I want to be a speaker, but they've never posted about how they're available for speaking. They've never tried to get on podcasts. Like, they don't tell anyone that they're available. They just say that's what they want. So actually posting about what you're doing is really important to your own audience.
Yeah, and I think overall, just the fact that you're sharing what you do in such a natural conversational way, and the fact that you can create clips and snippets and quotes and put them out there so easily. I mean, there's just so many apps now that you throw it in there and you create incredible clips that look amazing. It's not difficult. So, you know, very in the beginning, yeah, there was some editing, but now you just throw it in something and you get these great clips. And I think the greatest success is how many calls I get now. From every time a show airs, I get clarity calls booked and my calendar's full. And these are typically people that have not listened to the full episode. They've listened to sound bites from the show. And so that tells you a lot about the credibility and what an impact, an emotional impact it makes from just a sound bite, just by sharing what you do in such a natural way. So those, you know, I think the relationships that I've built with hosts, I've been able to book them as clients, their family members as clients. I was very nervous in the beginning to have conversations with the host, I'll be honest, but I was encouraged by the team to do that. And once I did it, it was a piece of cake because they're excited to have you, and they'll say, "Oh, I want to know more too." So they become clients usually as well.
Yeah, you are so good about posting your short clips of you as a guest. It's something that, you can make with an AI software. It's something that we're now doing for members of Interview Connections. We're creating those short clips. A lot of hosts will create them as well. And you're always posting them. And like you said, people will see, sometimes they'll listen to the full episode, and sometimes all they need is to see is one little clip. And that one thing
Mm-hmm.
you said in that clip is enough to move them. What do you think it is about your podcast appearances? Like, I talk a lot about like being the unforgettable podcast guest, creating that emotional connection. Like, can you put your finger on what it is about you that moves so many listeners and hosts to want to work with you?
You know, I think when you're authentic, so it's authenticity. You're not, you're having a conversation. And so, yes, you're sharing your product or your service, but you get to be you. You can't fake it on a podcast. You're just having a conversation. So I think that I mean, I'm an energy healer. So, I mean, when you are authentic, people feel it. And when people feel it, they get a real sense of what you do and who you are. And that's everything. You know, I don't care what you're selling or what you're doing. People feel that through your words and your energy. And so I feel they trust you, they like you. I mean, this is really important stuff. So to be able to sense that in 30 seconds, 15-second clip, they want to know more. I mean, to be able to have them book a call to want to talk to you, we know how valuable this is. Once you have them on a call, then you get to tell them more about what you do and who you are and see if they're a good match and align them with the right product or service. But to get them on the call that's tough.
Yeah. And you've had a lot of podcast hosts, like the hosts that we book you with, they interview you and then they want to work with you, or
Mm-hmm.
they say, I want you to work with, a family member.
Yeah.
You've worked with kids that was not really your target market, but then people are like, can
No.
you do this on a kid? And you're like, yeah. So
Yeah.
talk more about your relationships with these podcast hosts. You've also mentioned that sometimes like early on you were being interviewed by medical doctors, which like you share a little bit about maybe like the imposter syndrome at first and how you've broken through that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had major imposter syndrome in the beginning. This was a new career. So, you know, I didn't, like anything new, you kind of like, okay, people are going to wonder if I know this or that, or do I know this or that? So it was incredible to be interviewed by medical doctors. And here I am, doing something that was new, and to be respected in an area that was different. And it was wonderful to have peer conversations about this, and to ask them, medical doctors or psychologists, to ask me to see their children. And what it did was allow me to not only gain confidence, but to also see areas in my business that I hadn't even considered. So, what it does was the questions that the host started asking me allowed me to see, gosh, they're really all interested in this one area. And from there, I was able to say, okay, maybe I need to gear my business or my marketing in this area, because everybody wants to talk about this, and I get more likes, or I get more clarity calls, or I get, more attention when I talk about boundaries, when I talk about imposter syndrome. And it just wasn't an area that I thought. So it definitely geared conversations. It geared my business. I geared programs towards the areas based on the conversations that I was having with hosts. The things that they were interested and curious about, I would change my one sheet based on those things. Maybe areas that I hadn't really even thought about based on those conversations. So that's really it opened markets. Children was one of them. I had never thought about working with teens and children until, I mean, if people start asking about it, then okay, well, yeah, maybe it is something. And once you open the floodgate and other people, I have a whole market now of teenagers and children, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Your work really is amazing. Like I mentioned, Christina, I've had my daughter who's 10 years old over the past 2 years do multiple hypnotherapy sessions and Reiki energy healing sessions with Christina. And it's so, so, so wonderful. So I cannot recommend her highly enough. Yeah, it really does open up new markets. And there's that quick feedback loop, which I think is a huge benefit to podcast guesting is, sometimes we put out, when we do broadcast marketing, we're like sending out an email, sending out a text, putting out an ad, we kind of wait for the data to come back. How many clicks were there? How many impressions were there? How many people commented? But with podcast guesting, you get this immediate feedback loop by way of a conversation. Like, oh, they're actually asking this question. They're responding in this
Mm-hmm.
way. They're talking to me about this in the green room chat right after. You get really qualitative information that you can use to tweak your message and shift the types of shows that you're getting on. It's really a fantastic strategy. It can really transform your messaging and your business. You mentioned like maybe you've made some new programs or created new offers based off of what people have said.
Yeah. Well, there was one time I was on a show, and I can remember I never really questioned the shows that you put me on because I know by now. But there was one time where I thought, okay, I don't know, this doesn't really seem like my market. And that was the show that I literally thought something was wrong with my mailing list, because my
I
mailing
remember
list
that message.
yeah, my mailing list grew so much that they were just coming in so fast. I literally thought something was wrong with it. But that was a show that the audience was more of a male audience. And so that's an example of I primarily work with women. But this was like a high performance male nutrition type of show. And of course, I do hypnosis. So, this is high performance, peak performance, nutrition, exercise. How can hypnosis help in that area? So that opened up an area where I do work with CEOs and peak performance, and an area where I'll work now more with male CEOs in that area that I hadn't really thought of or thought there would be any interest. And I mean, the mailing list and the email inbox showed me otherwise. So yeah.
That was a very fun message to receive.
Yeah, I thought something was wrong. Yeah.
It was like, I think something's broken. And it was just, yeah, sometimes one of the ways to be most successful with us is to be open to the strategy. That's why we have monthly calls with our clients where you can tell us, what types of shows are driving the results? What are the conversations like with different types of hosts? Because then our booking team is able to really target and tweak the outreach approach to that. So I love that. Christina, you mentioned the clarity call. Is that your main call to action at the end of a podcast when you're telling listeners where to go? Like, where are you sending the listeners that has them booking calls right after the interviews go live?
Yeah, that is. I've played with it. I've done different things, but that actually is the one so far that is the best one for me. So I offer a 30-minute free clarity call, kind of consultation with people. And I think just for what I do, there's a little bit of a mystery, and people really appreciate that. So yeah, that's the one that I offer, and I stick with one and one platform. So
Yes, yes, that's definitely our top recommendation is to have one call to action. And more often than not, our clients that are coaches or healers like Christina or have a service where that you do a call with a client beforehand, just after they hear you on a podcast, 30, 45, maybe an hour long interview, they're probably pretty close to the bottom of your sales funnel at that point, even if they've
Mhm.
never opted in.
They
So
are.
directing them right to your website where they can book a call works really well. For some clients, it's a lead magnet or something like that. We can help advise you on the right call to action for your business. But more often than not, it is some type of call that is the best call to action. So thank you so much for sharing. Are there
Yeah.
any other like pieces of advice or words of wisdom that you would share with the entrepreneurs here who are on the fence and haven't yet taken the step to work with us?
I mean, don't wait. I feel like I waited too long. I will never not do this. It's just a part. It's the most investment and time that I spend in my business, but it's growing. It's easy, it's fun, it's exciting, it's a kind of a no-brainer. It is it's the most authentic way that you get to communicate what you do, and then you get to take what you do and easily multiply it into other clips and other ways to market. So it's yeah, it's a lot of fun. The team is amazing to work with. They're so easy and fun to work with.
Thank you so much. Where can our audience find you online if they want to work with you or ask you any follow-up questions? Where can they go?
Instagram, Christina.Elwoods.
Awesome. We have put that link in the chat, Christina.Elwoods. Follow her on Instagram. Reach out. Christina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on our speakers today. This is the best strategy for getting your message out in an aligned and authentic way. Give me a yes in the chat if you related to what both Julia and Christina were saying about just kind of figuring out the social media algorithm, feeling like you're speaking into the void when you're just posting but not really hearing back. And you know that your best content flows when you are responding to questions. When you have an opportunity to be in an authentic conversation and you have this space to share your story, to explain, to connect, that is when people feel moved to work with you. You know that your best clients come after they hear you speak. If people can just hear you speak, they will want to work with you. Give me a yes if you relate to that sentiment and you know. So, the next step now, this is the end of the podcast guesting masterclass, our sessions. Apply to work with us at Interview Connections by going to interviewconnections.com/call. Just share a little bit of information, book a call, and then we'll have a conversation on Zoom and talk about the next steps and choose a membership level that works best for you. I'm going to go over again what is included in the Interview Connections membership. We have 3 different tiers, so you can choose the speed and the amount of visibility that you want for your podcast guesting. So 1, 3, or 5 bookings per month. That's our silver, gold, and platinum level. We're going to write and design your podcast one sheet and your media kit. Kevin here, who just started working with us, said our podcast one sheets are top notch. They look incredibly professional, and we know how to write them in a way that will get hosts' attention and really represent you as the leading expert in your industry. We will also repurpose all of the interviews that get published while you're a member of Interview Connection. So you'll get those clips. And as Christina said, you could get leads and sales just from people who see a clip of you being interviewed on social media. So those are incredibly valuable. You'll have a personalized booking agent, a dedicated booking agent on our team who will have a call with you every month to advise you on podcast guesting strategies and how to amplify your authority with this strategy, to talk through your topics and questions. As Christina said, you may want to tweak your messaging as you're getting that feedback from these hosts. So you'll have those monthly calls with your booking agent. And then I also host mastermind calls every month. So there is an opportunity to plug into a business mastermind mastermind and get coaching and feedback from other 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs that are also getting interviewed on podcasts. We also have quarterly networking calls, and you'll get access to our school community. So we have a whole school community where we have pre-recorded trainings and resources. So you'll get access to that as well. And the next step is to book a call. Apply to work with us by going to interviewconnections.com/call. And the investment for the membership, our silver level is just $1,000 a month. Gold is $1,875 a month, and platinum is $3,250 a month. If you invest annually, you get a month free. So go to interviewconnections.com/call and apply to work with us. We cannot wait to talk to you. This is such a perfect time to get started because we can onboard you in December and get you on podcasts right after the New Year holiday when hosts are all looking for their Q1 guests. So go to interviewconnections.com/call to apply to work with us. Again, you have access to the replays until December 19th. So if you need to rewatch anything, you can do that until December 19th. Thank you all so much for being here for the Podcast Guesting Masterclass, the last Masterclass of 2025. I cannot wait to see you inside the Interview Connections membership. Again, go to interviewconnections.com/call to apply. And I cannot wait to talk to you. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Claudette. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jenny Lind. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone. So I will see you all soon. Have a great rest of your day and happy holidays.